Hello everyone, it's Anna, also known as Book Anna, and today we're gonna have a little chat about my favorite books. Well, not my favorite books, but my 5-star reads. Still, if you go to my Goodreads, you will find that some other books are also listed under 5-star books, but that is just because I didn't know any better. For these books, I'm certain that they are 5-star reads, but we are going to go through genres. Started with sci-fi, then we're going to go to epic fantasy, YA fantasy, then horror, then fiction. I think there's one that's kind of thriller fiction that I already talked about, and then classics, which I didn't talk about still on my channel. But every other genre I think I spoke about, and also some books I already mentioned. I already talked about them in my previous videos or in the video that's gonna go up next week, so I'm not gonna go into too many details for those books, but for others I'm gonna try to just be very concise of explaining about what they are. Okay, also I'm really sorry about the lighting because it's a storm outside. Anyways, let's get into the video. Okay, starting off, we have 3 sci-fi books, 2 of which I'm mentioned already. So first one is Morningstar by Pierce Brown, the third in trilogy of Red Rising. I already talked about how much I love this book. I already talked about how much I love characters in this book. I don't think it's a big surprise that it was a 5-star book for me. So I'm not gonna go into any details, but that's the first one on my list. The second book I talked about in not so nice segment of my last video, and the segment was what book was my biggest disappointment, and that would be Black Sun, and I talked about the sequel to Black Sun. Black Sun is a book I reread 2 times already, and I love it every time even more, and then I go to sequel and I'm really angry about the sequel because I expected so much, but I'm not gonna go into ranting mode again because I had to cut out a big chunk of my video just ranting about how the sequel is so bad. But Black Sun is so good, so if you're willing to read a first book and then be aware of disappointment that the second book will bring, you're good, because this book really is damn. It's, it's just whoa for me. It was just whoa because Narampa and Serapio are just, and Xiala also, I think that's how you pronounce it, but the names, god, the names are great, and also the whole story, amazing, and the story is just amazing also because one of the main characters is made to be bad, to be an embodiment of the god, and he can control crows, which I thought was amazing. Come on, I want to control crows also. And then you have the second main character who is a mermaid, and the third main character who is a priest. She needs to get this guy who wants to be god and who is embodiment of god out of the city, but then they don't know, they are confronting each other, but they're not sure which side is good anymore. And the third book, I really hope the third book will be good because it deserves better. And next sci-fi book I'm gonna be talking about is Foundation by Isaac Asimov. I read Foundation first 3 books and then I DNF'd the rest because I don't think it's worth it. So if you don't know, Foundation is made into books, but firstly it was published in some kind of magazine in chapters, and you can really see that in a book. But for first 2 books it wasn't a problem for me, and the first part of the third book was still readable, but then afterwards I just couldn't go. So first story, the one with the mule, I recommend reading that one, and then if you feel like going forwards with read, you can, but I honestly am pretty happy with just reading the first part of the story, which is contained in first 2.5 books. Alright, let's get into fantasy mode now. I am going to go through, again, 3 books. And first one being the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. The first book is the best book. The second was okay, the third one was the weakest for me. The first book, I really enjoyed the point of view, which is talking like you are the character. You are doing this, you are doing that, and then just the plot twist at the end and the main character, which I didn't read a lot of main characters who are mothers, and I never thought I would be enjoying that kind of POV, but I really did. And also the whole traveling through this dystopian world and this powers they have with moving ground and earth, and just amazing. Okay, next book is a standalone, finally standalone book, which is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is my first Brandon Sanderson book I've ever read, and I enjoyed it very, very much, as you can see. This magic system is truly remarkable, and I still think about it, and I read this book I think even 4 years ago now. But the magic system is basically where you take colors from things and you I actually don't remember completely the magic system. You basically take these colors from things and you use them, and then as colorful as you are richer, I believe. So the rich one, you can see if they are rich because they are full of colors, you know. And then you have ores that are basically gray colored, you know. Point of view of a god that's just being like, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to be dead, please can I be dead. It's hilarious, and I've really enjoyed this book. It is a great starter for Brandon Sanderson, definitely, and I believe now it got a sequel that will come out soon, so I'm pumped about that. And the last book I already talked about, and that is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. If you know me in real life, you know that I gush about this book to everyone all the time, and I'm trying to get everyone to read it, although it has more than 1,000 pages. But I believe it's worth it, because the character building in this series and the way the world is made, and you know, that like eternal storm, I just get goosebumps thinking about it. But the book is amazing, the character work is amazing, it's just that good. Now we're gonna go into fantasy that is not like epic, more like fantasy or magic realism. But the first one is not in today's world, but it's a little less epic fantasy, and that is Strange Dreamer by Laini Taylor. This book, I read it, it is very lyrical. So this book follows our character, who is a librarian, and he's obsessed with a city that nobody knows how it's called. And then he gets an opportunity to go into this city and help these people, because their city is covered with this big kind of statue, hovercraft. And you are going through this amazing story that you're looking from their perspective and his perspective and other people in this city. I just love it really a lot, both of the books. The next book that came out did it come out last year? Or the year before that? No, I think it was 2022. Babel by Kuang. I bought Poppy War, and then I never read Poppy War, and then I bought Babel, and I thought, you know what, book looks easier to read and get into. Babel, the one that everybody is talking how maybe it's a bit boring. To me, it wasn't even a bit boring. I loved it. I loved the atmosphere, this academic magic atmosphere, the talk about colonialism and how our main character saw that, and the way it ended. I loved those kind of ends, and you have a lot of linguistic little tidbits in it, and I enjoyed it very, very much. I love, I guess, linguistics in books, and I really think this book gave me a lot of material that I thought about afterwards. And it's a thick one, but you know what, I feel like all the books that people say are really hard to get through, I get through like this. And the books that people say, oh, you will read it in one day, it's so bingeable. It's not bingeable. This one I actually did kind of binge. So Babel, yes. The next book I have a special edition of already, and that is The Invisible Life of Addie Larue. This book is just amazing. I love books about... Well, I guess I just love books that happen in Europe, traveling through Europe and just learning about languages, and this kind of has it also, that kind of vibe. Although it's not academic, it's more like traveling, trying to find purpose in life when you are not remembered by anybody, which is what happens to Addie, right? Because she makes deal with the devil. I know that people either love it or hate it. I love it. I really do. And this is the only book I read by V.E. Schwab, and I want to read more books by V.E. Schwab because I love her writing style. Next one is YA fantasy, and I think this is the only, well, I don't think I know this is the only YA fantasy in this video, and that is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I saw Carrie Reed's her review rant of this book. She basically spoiled the whole book for me, but it's okay, it was like spoilery review, and I just watched it and I got the whole book was spoiled for me, and then I decided to pick it up because it sounded really fun and I loved how she explained it, and I just want to pick up everything that she explains. That's the reason why I'm reading Crescent City right now. This book is like Tim Burton movie in a book form. I know it's young adult, but I just, you give me Alice in Wonderland, Tim Burton-esque Alice in Wonderland in a book form, and we're following Queen of Hearts? Come on, that's just, you really struck the middle. I don't know what to say about it, it's just I'm just mesmerized by this book, and I tried reading other books by Marissa Meyer's, her duology, Gilded and Cursed. I didn't like it that much. It's also retelling. She does a lot of retellings, but this one just, it struck a chord for me. Moving on to horror. This is the biggest stack. It's horror and a bit of fiction with a little horror, and also I talked about a lot of these books already, so although there are a lot of them, I will not go into details about any of them, almost. The first one we have is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I always mispronounce his name. This book is giant. Also read it pretty quick for how big it is, because one word at a page, I already talked about it. I read it this year. I loved it. It made one of my top books of the year. I know a lot of people have this book on their TBR and they're just afraid and scared to start it. Don't be scared to start it. Just start it. You will see it's really not that hard to go through, and you don't even need to go through like one part at a time. You just read one and then read the second because it's written in two ways. It's good. Next one I also talked about, and that is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This was my first horror book, and I think I would still love it if I read it now. Already talking about what it is about. I feel this book just made me realize that I love horror, and it's just freeing to read the most gruesome things that you can think of. It's just kind of freeing to read about them. The next book I also talked about, Dowry of Blood by Gibbson. This book I also loved. I read it in a day. I already said that. It's a vampire book. I love vampire books. It's Victorian-esque, although it's not only in Victorian age, but just vampire Victorian, Next book we have is my top favorite book, and I already talked about it a lot, and that is All's Well by Awad. And I wouldn't say this is a horror book, but it is classified as horror book. All of her books are classified as horror books, I believe. But this is my favorite. I recommend this book to everybody, and I will lend this book to anybody who asks me, because I think it's a book that everyone should read. For the last two books, I didn't talk about these two books, but the first one is Rouge by Awad, and this is my special edition. I bought it as soon as it came out last year. Rouge is a book about being pretty, and it is kind of Snow White-esque. There's a weird thing with Tom Cruise in this book and Mirror, and I loved every part of it. I love how Awad just writes the weirdest things in her book, and I just always, okay, you know what, that makes sense in your book. I love Awad. If you didn't know by now, she's one of my favorite writers. And Rouge was really not a letdown. Rouge was also a great book. It follows, I don't know how she's called. It doesn't say on the backside how she's called, but I loved our main character. This kind of cult of beauty, and you're getting into it, and then love talks about beauty in our society, because I think it's a very interesting topic and a topic we should talk about more. Okay, and the last book on my horror list is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. It's about future in which people can't eat animals, so they consume other people. They have farms with other people on them, and they consume them and they hunt them like animals. And the twist in this book, the end of this book, so good, so great. I won't say anything more because I don't want to spoil anything. This book is top notch. Moving on to my fiction. So this I will run through very quickly because I already talked about all of these books in my videos. One of them is still not up, but you will see that I talked about this book. First one being Bright Young Woman by Jessica Knoll. I already talked about this book in my last video in 2 of the questions, so I'm not gonna talk about it anymore. Just watched my last video. But I really enjoyed this book. It was very big surprise to me to enjoy it because I didn't even know what it is about. Like I said, it's pink yellow cover for me. I don't know, it just made me feel something I never felt in a book before. The next book I also talked about in my last video, and that is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. I mispronounced her name in every single one of my videos that I talked about. This New York feel book for me. Rich people in New York, artistic, marriage problems. I really enjoyed her writing style. The last book on my fiction, Chinko by Min Jin Lee. This book is really sad. It's really sad, but it's really good because it's so realistic. I just love this book so much. And the last genre I'm gonna be talking about is classics. So there are 4 classics that I love. First classic is Great Gatsby. This is on my language, but it's Great Gatsby by Scott Fitzgerald. You probably know what this book is about. It's about the guy that wants the girl, so he does everything and he gets rich and he makes all these parties so she will come, but you're not going through a story from his perspective, but from perspective of the other person, the other man who meets him and interested by this guy and who he's really, and then you see this girl that he wants and her husband, and there are all of these talks, and I really enjoyed it. The next book is A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. I first, of course, watched the movie A Clockwork Orange, then I decided, you know what, I want to read the book. I love the movie, I love the book separately. I don't see them as a package. I will still never get the scenes of him having open eyes and looking at terrifying images out of my head. That is something I will forever have it up here, but just the book is amazing. Next one is Bell Jar by Silvia Plath. This book I think I read last year, I believe, and I instantly loved it. I love this book and I loved her point of view, and the characters that go through life with weird mindsets are the characters I enjoyed the most. And this didn't even read like classic to me, by the way. I think all of these my favorite classics are, but this one in particular, I just didn't feel like it was a classic book. I felt like it was something that someone just wrote, and the year that I read it. And the last classic that I have is Bel Ami by Guy de Maupassant. That's French and I don't know how to speak French. But this book, nobody talks about this book. Nobody talks about Maupassant. Again, mispronounce it probably. I love this book. This book is just hilarious. It's about a guy that just one day thinks to himself, you know what I'm gonna be doing? I'm gonna pretend like I'm rich, I'm gonna pretend like I have a great job, I'm gonna pretend like all women want me, and then I will get everything. And he succeeds in it. He actually succeeds and he fools everybody. He gets even better job than his last job that he didn't have. He gets every woman wants him, you know, like mother and daughters. And I love the book. I just found it so completely funny, and I want to read so bad some more classics by Maupassant. Okay, so this is the end of the video. I really hope you will read some of the books that I talked about today, that I just gave you a little synopsis of them, and that my gushing about them made you want to pick them up. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for going through my quick 5-star reads. I don't know how many books here are, but I will definitely let you know in the title. Thank you guys for watching. As I said, leave in the comments your favorites, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!